The last time I saw Merrick, he was going backward through the window of the North Guardhouse, and the thing that put him through it was already turning toward the rest of us. That is where my mind starts every night, whether I ask it to or not. It will not make sense to you yet. It barely makes sense to me, and I was standing 11 feet away. The paper that kept my mouth shut expired at midnight. 14 years of silence, notarized. I counted the days the way other men count toward retirement. So this is my story, told out of order in places, with holes in it, because that is what I have. My name does not matter. I grew up outside Chillicothe, Ohio, enlisted at 19, did 11 years of Army reconnaissance work I am still not allowed to describe. In my early 30s, a man in a gray suit met me in a Denny's parking lot off Interstate 90 and offered a job where the pay was triple and the questions were zero. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I had a sister in Billings raising 2 boys on a nurse's salary, and nothing else going on except a storage unit and a bad shoulder. The job was in Montana. A fenced parcel of federal land, about 90 square miles of timber and rock that showed on public maps as a watershed research station. We called it the Block. 6 of us on the ground team, a rotating support element we almost never saw, and 1 research liaison named Calloway, who did not carry a weapon and did not eat with us. What lived inside the Block were werewolves. I am going to use that word because after 14 years I am done softening things. They were people once. Something got into them, or was put into them, and it burned out whatever makes a person and left the machinery of a predator. 6 feet and change on their hind legs, gray or rust-colored, fast in the trees and faster downhill. No language, no tools, no memory of doors or names. What they kept was the hunting instinct, and it ran clean and hot. Our job was population work. Keep the count stable, keep them inside the wire, put one down when the numbers rose past a line drawn in Washington. We knew their weaknesses the way a plumber knows pipe. They would not cross running water wider than about 8 feet unless driven. A certain tone, low and pulsed, played through a speaker, made them circle instead of charge, and if you could get one circling, you could walk it into a kill box. Merrick used to say the job was ranching with extra steps. He had been a ranger, and then something after ranger. The others, Okafor, big and quiet, carried the heavy gun and a paperback in a plastic bag. Hutchins, we called him Hutch, youngest of us, could fix any engine ever made. Calloway with his sample kits, and Reyes. I have to be careful how I talk about Reyes, because I know now that everything I felt about him got used. He was the best of us, and everyone knew it. Reyes could sit against a tree for 6 hours without moving anything but his eyes. The pulse tone trick was not in any manual. He worked it out himself over 2 winters and taught it to me. He gave me his lighter once, a beat-up brass Zippo with a horseshoe stamped on the side. "Keep it," he said. I still have it. 6 months before everything happened, Reyes transferred out. That is how it was said to us. Transferred. No goodbye, no beer, no forwarding address. His gear sat in his locker for 3 weeks, and then one day the locker was empty, and nobody had seen who emptied it. Merrick told us he had been pulled up to a training billet back east, and Merrick believed it when he said it. Here is what I noticed in those years and filed away as normal, because when strange things come at you on a payroll, you make them normal, or you quit. Calloway drew blood from every carcass, tagged it, packed it in crates with a medical logo I never bothered to look up. The count from up top was always exact, not close, exact. We would get a number, 31, and it would be 31, and I told myself that was aerial thermal work, even though the canopy ate thermal signatures. Every wolf we ever put down had a small, healed mark behind the left ear, and Calloway called it mange scarring, and I nodded, because the man had letters after his name, and I had a mortgage on my sister's house by then. And the wolves never crossed the western line. There was no river there, and no fence for a 2-mile gap where the rock got steep. And in 14 years of records, not one animal ever crossed it. Not even the winter the elk herd failed, and they were starving. I put that down to terrain. You would have too. The last normal thing in my life was a phone call. My sister, on a Thursday in late October. Her oldest had made varsity, and I stood outside the bunkhouse in the cold, and told her I would call Sunday and hear the whole game story properly. I had my hand in my jacket pocket the whole time, turning Reyes's lighter over and over while she talked. Horseshoe up, horseshoe down. I told her Sunday. Friday at dusk, the relay station on the North Line stopped answering. Not static, not weather noise. It transmitted a carrier tone for 9 seconds, dead clean, then nothing. Merrick came out of the radio room, looked at the four of us, and said, "Get dressed." Merrick, Okafor, Hutch, and me went up the North Line that night. Calloway stayed back with the support radio, which was procedure. 9 miles of service road in the dark, Hutch driving, nobody talking. We were not afraid. We knew every animal inside that wire better than our own families, and we were annoyed about missing dinner. The relay station was a concrete box the size of a one-car garage, a mast on top, a steel door with 2 locks. The truck lights hit it from about 80 yards out, and Hutch slowed without being told. The door was lying in the clearing, not hanging, lying, 10 feet from the frame, and the frame was pushed outward. The bolts had torn through the concrete from the inside face. Whatever moved that door was in the building when it did it, or reached in and pulled, and either way the geometry was wrong for anything we managed. The wolves broke things by hitting them. They left everything bent inward. In 14 years I never saw one work a barrier apart. This door had been peeled. We cleared the box by flashlight. Inside, the radio gear was untouched, every rack clean and lit. The only thing missing was the field speaker unit, the pulse tone rig. Its padded case was open on the floor, empty, the padding pressed down in the shape of the unit, and next to it, set upright on the concrete, was the spare battery pack. Placed, not dropped. Okafor said maybe the support element had pulled the unit for maintenance. That was our first story, and we all reached for it together. Merrick got on the radio and asked if anyone had authorization to be on the North Line, and Calloway's voice came back thin and strange and said, "Negative," and then said something I did not process at the time. He said, "What is the condition of the door?" Not, "Is the station damaged?" Like there was a checklist somewhere with that question on it. Merrick told him, and there was a silence on the channel, and then Calloway said, "Return to base, all of you, right now," and his voice had no research in it anymore. We did not return to base. The rule when the count is unverified is you verify the count, and Merrick had been given that rule by the same people who gave Calloway his checklist. We rode the line west with the windows down and the spotlight working the tree line, looking for the herd. We found them at the second creek crossing, and this is where the night stopped being a story I knew how to be inside of. All of them. The entire population, packed into the creek bottom, pressed together facing east, upslope, away from us, silent, and they were trembling. 30-some apex bodies, each one capable of taking a bull elk off its feet, standing in freezing water because none of them would take the dry ground on either bank. I had the spotlight on them, and not one head turned into the light. Every nervous system in that creek was pointed at something in the dark uphill. Hutch said poachers. Our second story. Somebody had come over the rock gap, taken the tone unit, and was moving the herd for some black market capture, and it felt good to say it, because men can be understood. Merrick let the story live for about a minute. Then he pointed at the far bank. The wolves would not cross running water. That fact was load-bearing. We bet our lives on it. And on the far bank, coming up out of the creek gravel where something very heavy had walked straight across the water without hurrying, the brush was pushed apart in a line going west, toward the rock gap, the 2-mile stretch where no fence had ever been needed because no animal ever went there. And from the west, a long way off, thin and pulsed and patient, I heard our own tone. Somebody, or something out in that timber was playing the sound we used to make wolves circle, and the herd in the creek was not circling. They were hiding. The tone had never calmed them. It was a voice. It said something in a language they knew and we did not, and for years we had been repeating a word without knowing what it meant, and now something out in the dark was saying it correctly. Merrick called it in. What he got back was not Calloway. It was a voice I had never heard, flat, male, no call sign, and it said one sentence. Hold your position. Do not approach the western boundary. A recovery element is inbound. Recovery, not support. Recovery is a word you use for property. Okafor asked it for all of us. Recovery of what? The radio did not answer. Then Hutch, back at the truck to kill the engine, made a sound I had never heard from him, low, like air going out of a man, and we turned. The truck was tilted, the rear end down on a flattened tire, the tailgate folded, actually folded, the way you fold a letter. And on the road behind it, at the far edge of the spotlight spill where the light went gray and grainy, something was standing up. It rose from the tree line in one motion, no gathering, no shifting of weight, and it was the wrong size. Your brain measures a wolf against a man, and this thing broke the ruler. It stood there with the tone unit hanging from one hand by the strap, the way you carry something you know how to carry, and it did not charge, and it did not circle. It reached over with its other hand, not looking at us, and turned the unit off. The tone stopped. The night went total. And behind us, in the sudden quiet, 30-some bodies came up out of the creek at once, not toward us, away. A stampede of the most dangerous animals on the continent, running from the same thing we were now between. And the road back was behind the shape in the gray light, the creek at our backs, and no version of the map had the word retreat on it anymore. There are 2 full stretches of that night that I do not have, and I will not fill them in, because the men who questioned me later kept trying to fill them in for me, and I learned what that costs. The shape in the gray light did not come at us. Everything I knew said it should have. 4 heat signatures, pinned against water, blinded by our own spotlight. Instead, it stood there and looked down the road east, past us, the way you look when you are expecting somebody. Merrick had us backing toward the creek, slow, weapons up, talking in that low, flat voice of his. Nobody fires, it is not committing. And my legs were doing the thing where you tell them to move, and there is a delay. I remember I needed to urinate so badly it burned, and I was ashamed of that even then. Memory keeps the wrong receipts. Then the east sky went loud. 2 helicopters running dark, coming in over the road low enough that the trees leaned, and the shape on the road turned its head toward them. It set the tone unit down, gently, bent at the knees, laid it in the grass off the roadside the way you set down something you plan to come back for, and then it went into the trees. I do not have a verb for it. It was in the light, and then the light was empty. The helicopters put men on the road, 8 of them, and they were shooting almost immediately, not at us, and not at anything I could see. They put fire into the tree line in sweeps. Merrick was on the radio yelling, "Friendly, friendly, ground team on the road," and the flat voice said, "Hold your position and mark yourselves," and we cracked green chem lights and held them up like children at a fair. One of their men came over to us, armor with no flag on it, no tape, no name. Up close he was young. He checked a screen strapped to his forearm, looked at each of our faces in turn, then at the screen again, checking us against a list. And he lingered on me, half a second longer than the others. At the time I filed it as nothing. It was not nothing. He said, "Which one of you had contact with the asset? Not the animal, not the specimen, the asset." And Okafor, who had maybe said 40 words that whole year, said, "That is not one of ours." And the young man said, without any weight on it at all, the way you would say the time of day, "He is one of ours. He. Ours." There is the first hole. I have the young man's mouth making those words, and then I have nothing until the guardhouse. And between those 2 points is somewhere around 4 miles. The doctors later called it dissociative. We ended up at the North Guardhouse because the shooting had moved that way, and it was no longer sweeps into a tree line. It was men screaming range calls with their machinery down and their order gone, and something moving through them the way weather moves through a field. The guardhouse was concrete, 1 room, gun ports, a steel window shutter that stood open. Merrick put us inside because it was the only hardcover on that stretch, and this is where I saw the things that took my life apart, so I will lay them down flat, the way I did for the tribunal that never believed me. I saw it take a man's rifle away from him and throw the rifle, not the man. The man it left sitting in the road. I saw it move through 6 armed professionals in the time it takes to read this sentence, and when it was done, some of those men were not going to get up again. I understood that from how they came to rest. But 2 of them it stepped over. Stepped over, mid-fight, the way you step over a sleeping dog. I saw it stop, in the open, under a flare, and go absolutely still. And the stillness is what did it. I had seen that stillness before. 6 hours against a tree without moving anything but the eyes. You do not forget a stillness like that when a man teaches it to you with his own body. When he sits beside you in the cold and says, "The woods do not hide you, son. The woods forgive you for moving, and this is how you ask." I got the shutter open wider, Merrick yelling at me, put the handheld spotlight on it, full beam, and it turned into the light, and it let me see it. Behind its left ear there was a small, healed mark. Same mark as every carcass Calloway ever bled and tagged. I know because my hand went to my own head, to the spot behind my own left ear where 14 years ago a medic gave every new hire what they called a regional inoculation, and I felt the little ridge of it under my finger. Every wolf in that block had one. Every one of us had one. The count was exact because it was inventory. The blood went out in crates because it was product. The herd never crossed the western line because the western line is where they were made, and you do not go back to a place like that, even after they burn out everything in you that has words. The bodies trembling in that freezing creek were not animals. They were hires. Men in gray suit parking lots saying yes before the sentence finished. Years of them. And we were not rangers keeping a population inside a fence. We were the next crop, walking patrols around the current one. And Reyes was not transferred east. I said his name through the gun port. I am told I screamed it. I only have the word leaving me, and I have what happened after, which is that the thing in the light stopped being a thing. Its posture changed. A quarter-inch through the shoulders, the head coming level, and it looked at the guardhouse, at the port, at me behind the light, and for a beat the whole burning night went out of my ears, and I knew that it knew me. Whatever was left in there, and something was left, the process gone right or gone wrong on him in a way it had not gone on the others, had my face in it. Then the second hole, the short one, the worst one. On one side of it Reyes is standing in the flare light looking at me, and on the other side he is inside the guardhouse with us, and I do not have the door, I do not have the window, I do not have how. I have Hutch on the floor against the wall not moving, and I did not see what put him there, and neither did the tribunal, though they decided anyway. I have Okafor firing past me so close the muzzle heat took the hair off my wrist, and I have the sound leaving the world entirely, my own body gone quiet like a television unplugged. And I have Merrick going backward through the window, out into the dark, thrown, and the thing that threw him already turning toward the rest of us. That is the picture the prosecutors put on a screen, drawn by an artist, because I was fool enough to describe it honestly. Here is what the picture does not show. Half a breath after Merrick went through that window, the east wall of the guardhouse came in. The recovery element hit it with something from one of the helicopters, hit their own coordinates, hit the concrete box with 3 of their contract witnesses inside it, and the wall where Merrick had been standing became gravel and heat. I was on the floor with the room on top of me, and I understood, in the slow, underwater way, that Merrick had not been attacked. Merrick had been removed. One of us had been picked up and put out of that room in the last half second it was a room, and the arm that did it had chosen, and it had not chosen me. And I had time to think, clear as a bell. He does not know Merrick sat 6 hours against a tree too. He taught us both. Why Merrick? Why not? And then weight came onto me. Enormous, careful weight. Over me, not on me, braced, a cage of it, while the rest of the ceiling arrived. Heat, dust turning the air solid, and close to my ear, through the deafness, I felt more than heard a breath going in and out, slow, slower than mine, pacing mine downward the way you gentle a spooked horse, and I lay under the burning weight of what used to be the best man I ever served beside, while he held a building off my body. The last thing from that stretch of the night, before the third gap, the long one, the one that ends with hands and zip ties and a road, is the tone. Far off, west, thin and patient, playing all by itself in the timber where he had set it down in the grass. It was never for us. I woke up in a room with soft walls and a camera in the ceiling, and for the first 11 days nobody told me where Okafor was, or Hutch, or Merrick, and by the time somebody finally did, I had already worked it out from the shape of the questions. The questions went like this. Describe your relationship with Sergeant Reyes. Were you aware of Sergeant Reyes's medical status at the time of his transfer? When did you first assist him? Not whether, when. They had decided the story before I was conscious, and every session was them holding it up and waiting for me to climb in. Somebody had opened the relay station from the inside, taken the tone unit, somebody who knew the wolves, the ground, the gap in the western line. And there I was in the wreckage of the guardhouse, the only man of the four still breathing, dug out from under a collapsed wall without a broken bone on me, and no honest physics for how. They looked at that and did not see mercy. They saw an accomplice his partner had protected. I told them the truth. That was my mistake, and I knew it while I was making it. And I made it anyway, because Merrick and Okafor and Hutch deserved a true account. I told them about the mark behind the ear. I told them to check their own hires, check the crates, check what Calloway's blood work actually fed into. I asked them on the record how a program keeps an exact count of animals under canopy, and the lawyer they gave me put his hand flat on the table and looked at me the way you look at a man sawing through the branch he is sitting on. Calloway testified by video. He looked older and did not look at the camera. He said the inoculation was a standard regional prophylactic. The marks were mange scarring. The station studied watershed pathology, and he was not aware of any program of the kind the defendant described. He said the word defendant like it tasted of nothing. 14 years of eating 50 feet from that man. I turned the lighter over in my pocket. Horseshoe up, horseshoe down. And I did not feel anger. I felt like a man watching weather happen to somebody else's county. The tribunal was closed. 8 days. The words that got used were breakdown and fixation and elaborate persecutory structure. And a doctor with kind eyes explained to the panel that survivors of mass casualty events sometimes construct a rescuer to organize unbearable guilt, and that mine had a name and a face because guilt likes to borrow faces. I sat there and listened to him take the one true thing left in my life and fold it into a symptom. And he did it gently, and the gentleness was the worst part. They never charged me with hurting anyone. I want that written down somewhere outside their files. The finding was unfitness, complicity by negligence, and danger arising from delusional conviction. And the sentence was not called a sentence. It was called placement. The place I am in now sits in high desert and has no sign on the road. It holds men the government cannot try in public and cannot let go. My neighbors are a pilot who saw something over the Pacific and would not stop saying so, and a communications tech who mouths his reasons through the glass sometimes, and I cannot read lips. We are the men who know one true thing each, one true thing per man, and the walls are rated for it. My sister writes. They let most of her letters through. Her oldest is in college now, and she has never once asked me if I did what they say I did, and I love her for that more than I have loved anything. I have never told her that the last thing I promised her was a phone call on a Sunday that never came. I think about that call more than I think about the guardhouse some weeks. The guardhouse at least is over. The days here are meals and meds and a yard. The nights are for going back through 14 years with the lights on, now that I know what I was looking at. And the worst of it is how much was visible the whole time. The young man on the road checking his forearm screen was not counting survivors. He was reading inventory, and my number was on his screen the same as the herd's. Nobody saw who emptied Reyes's locker because you do not send movers for a man who is going 80 yards west of the fence line. And the gentle questions Calloway used to ask, offhand, about whether any of us had family who would raise noise if a contract went long. I answered that question once, honestly, about my sister, and he nodded and wrote nothing down. The writing nothing down was the whole point. Some lists are kept by leaving you off other lists. And the tone. I go around and around on the tone. We thought it made them docile, and we walked them into kill boxes with it, and they went. And for years I took that as proof of how empty they were. Now I lie on a bunk in the desert and think about 30-some former hires hearing a word from their old life played at them by their keepers, and going along quietly to the box. And I do not think docile is the word for what that was. I have stopped looking for the word. Some words you do not want to find. Here is the last thing, and then I am done, because I promised myself I would tell this once all the way through and never again. 14 months ago, this facility went to lockdown for a night and a day. No announcement, sirens at 2 in the morning, men in the corridors in that same blank armor, and through the slit window of my cell I could see the perimeter lights over the yard. At 2:40 in the morning, for about 4 minutes, the lights on the north fence went out. Just the north. Then they came back, and the next day the yard was closed. And the day after there were crews replacing a section of the north fence, and nobody has ever said one word to any of us about what happened. I am not going to tell you what I think came to the fence that night, because the doctors read what I write, and every conviction I put on paper adds a year to me, and anyway, you already know. I will only tell you what I did. I got the lighter from its shelf, sat on the floor facing the window, and turned it over in my hands in the dark, horseshoe up, horseshoe down, the way I did on the last normal night of my life. And I sat like that until the lights came back. Nothing moving but my hands and my eyes, the way he taught me. The woods forgive you for moving, and this is how you ask. The lights came back and the desert went back to being a desert, and I got up off the floor, 51 years old, my knees sounding like gravel, and stood at the window a while. They took everything. The job, the years, my name, 3 men I would have died beside, the version of me my sister used to get on the phone. But my window faces north, and I keep the lighter where I can reach it in the dark, and behind my left ear, when my finger finds it out of old habit at night, there is a small healed mark, the same as his. Whatever they made him into, it remembered me. I do not expect to be believed. I expect to die in this room, and I have made a kind of peace with the size of that. But some nights, out past the wire, out past the sodium lights, the high desert is very still. And I know what that stillness is. I sat beside it in the cold once, years ago in Montana, while it taught me how to ask.